Hello, my name is Darryn Witzgall, and I am a behavior analyst with Creek River Street Outreach Program. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some strategies to help resolve work avoidance. In this video, we're going to look at some possible reasons why your child might be engaging in the work avoidant behaviors, some ways to make the work easier so they're less likely to have avoidance problem behaviors, ways to deal with the behaviors as they occur, and then finally evaluating the reward systems that are in place and some possible tips and strategies on how to maximize their efficiency. Now, when we ask ourselves why they are trying to avoid the work, it comes down to one of two possible scenarios. Either they can't do the work or they just don't want to do the work. Regardless of the scenario, though, we want to try to make the work easier for them ahead of time so that they don't have to engage in the avoidance behaviors. Not only does making the work easier make them more likely to be successful, but it also makes them less likely to engage in avoidance problem behaviors. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will always be doing simplified work and not challenging themselves, but it is a strategy to use if you're trying to establish new routines or if the problem behaviors are preventing much or any work from being done. So how do we make the work easier? That's what we're going to talk about in the next slide. There are several different ways to try to make the work easier for your child. First, you want to make sure that the expectations of what they need to complete are clear and specific. For example, making a reading requirement to being a chapter a day instead of saying that they need to read for 30 minutes a day might be a more clear and concrete expectation. You also might want to consider initially lowering the expectation prior to and not in response to challenging behaviors because you don't want to reinforce those challenging behaviors. Next, you want to try to see what kind of visual supports are in place, whether it's a schedule, a task list, a token board, a first then board, whatever kind of visual supports might be in place. And you want to ask your case manager, the case manager for your child, what kind of visual supports have been in place for them at school that you can carry over at home, or if there's any materials that they could help provide you with. You also want to ask your child's case manager or teacher what kind of modifications are in place for your child or what possible modifications can be added in. And then finally, you want to try to tie in preferred topics. If your child likes sports, maybe they can read a book on basketball or soccer. Or if they're doing a science experiment, maybe Minecraft can be tied in, or fractions with Legos. All kinds of different scenarios. When your child is engaging in avoidance challenging problem behaviors, you want to try to provide alternatives for them to voice their frustrations more appropriately, such as saying, I need help, or I need a break, or even asking, can I do something else first, and then coming back to it, as long as what they are asking to do isn't too reinforcing. Those are all appropriate alternatives. Now, does this mean that they will always do this to escape and they will always ask for these to escape? Not necessarily, but you do want to keep an eye on it. And if it does become a pattern, then you might want to try a different tactic or try to evaluate what rewards you have in place, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's important to also keep in mind that if your child wants to avoid the work badly enough, they will. And they could keep upping the ante to more severe and serious behaviors. For example, whining and protesting might then become screaming, which might become aggression and or self-injury. And they're still getting out of the work. So it's better to prompt using an appropriate request than the more severe and intense behaviors when they both have the same outcome of getting out of the work in the first place. Another thing to consider when dealing with avoidance challenging behaviors is trying to take note of what they're trying to avoid. And you can do this by just asking them what it is that they like and they don't like, giving choices and seeing what they don't pick or what they pick last. And also to finding out what specifically it is about the assignment that they don't like. For example, if they have a hard time with writing, maybe it's because they don't know how to get started or organize their thoughts into what they want to write. Another example might be that it's not math they're trying to avoid, it's word problems because the language is too difficult. Knowing specifically what it is that they're trying to avoid can help to reframe the statement back to them, such as saying, "Oh, it's not math you hate, it's word problems are difficult for you." That can help to validate their concerns and also help inform what interventions you might be able to put in place. And some discussions with your case manager can also help with that as well. Another challenge that you might encounter with avoidance problem behaviors is that your child has a hard time ending preferred activities to come over to work. What you might consider for a strategy with this is to offer some kind of buffer activity in between the ending of the highly preferred activity and the introduction of the demand. This could be something that's moderately preferred, so they're more likely to end the reinforcing task. And this might look like a child getting off of video games to doing a puzzle to then doing a math worksheet. And it's important to be giving them some attention as well to reinforce their transition from the highly preferred activity to the work demand. Another thing to consider is to limit their access to those highly preferred activities like video games until after their work is completed so that you don't have to deal with the transition of the highly preferred to the work demand. When we're evaluating the reward system, we want to first take a look at what it is that they're earning. Is it rewarding enough? Is it something that they really want? Or are we just assuming their preference? We want to make sure that maybe we're asking them ahead of time, oh, what did you want after you're done with your work? Or providing some choices for them to pick from. Regardless, we want to just make sure that we're mixing it up a little bit and providing some variety, and that it actually is something that they want to earn. The second thing is looking at when they're earning it, making sure that there's not too much of a delay between when the work is completed to when they're getting their reward, but that they're also getting their reward frequently enough too. We don't want to necessarily set expectations to be 5 or 6 hours of work and then they get 30 minutes of play if that's something that's not going to be rewarding for them. So they might need a break, a reward break in between. And then finally, we want to look at controlling the access to the rewards. We don't want to necessarily offer something that they can have access to throughout the day that's not contingent on the work, because that they will lose motivation to do the work. And now to recap. If your child is engaging in avoidance problem behaviors, then you want to try to make the work easier, whether that's initially lowering expectations or just clarifying expectations, putting in visual supports, modifying the work, or tying in preferred interests and topics. Those are all ways to make the work easier and your child more likely to be successful with their work. And then you want to make sure that they have alternatives to the problem behaviors in place, such as asking for help or asking to take a break, as long as it's not to do something very highly preferred. Um, just a more appropriate request to escape the work rather than the problem behavior itself. And then you also want to evaluate what specifically about the work is it that they're trying to avoid. And you also want to make sure that you're limiting what they are doing instead of the work, reminding them of what they're earning, and then also evaluating your reward system too, making sure that it is something that is very valuable to them and that they're getting it frequently enough and as early enough after their work is completed to have it be rewarding. Thank you very much for your time and attention. If you have any comments, feedback, questions, please feel free to email me at dwitzgall@crec.org as part of the River Street Outreach Program. And please check out our other videos that we have on the website. I hope this has been informative to you, and I hope that you are all staying safe and staying strong during this difficult and challenging time. Thank you.